I'm Melissa Fuller with Shape of the City, and I am out in the backyard with Scott Lowry, an animal control officer. Hi. Hi. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. All right, so the weather is finally getting nice. People are getting outside, and I'm guessing you're getting a little busier at animal control.
Yeah, in the springtime, we start to see an uptick in calls from citizens as they spend more time outdoors and start to encounter wildlife.
What sort of response do you have for people saying, I've got raccoons, or I have a possum in my backyard, what should I do?
Generally speaking, when we have people call us and say, hey, I've seen an opossum in my backyard, or I've seen a raccoon, the first thing we're going to ask is, does it appear normal? Does it appear sick, or is it healthy? Does it appear like it's just doing its normal thing, or does something seem wrong with it? Typically, if you have a raccoon or an opossum that's healthy, doesn't have anything wrong with it, it's not sick, we're going to ask you to just leave the animal alone, let it go about its business and do its thing. If that animal's sick, then we want to send an officer out to respond and try to capture that animal.
What are some things that might indicate that it's sick?
With raccoons, we see a lot of distemper in raccoons, canine distemper. So what you'll typically see is the raccoon is out in the daytime. They're typically a nocturnal animal, but you'll see them, say, in your backyard. They'll appear intoxicated or drunk. They'll kind of stumble. They may have matting or fluid coming out of their eyes or their nose. That's a pretty good indication that the animal has distemper. They may let you approach it. You may get within several feet of the animal and not get any reaction. That's really odd for a raccoon. Raccoons typically don't want people getting close to them. So when we see that kind of behavior, that tells us there's something wrong with the animal. And so we want to respond and check it out and see what's going on.
Are there things you can do to deter them from coming to your backyard?
You're always going to get possums and raccoons traveling through your yard depending on what part of the city you live in. Some parts of the city have higher concentrations of these animals. But typically, if you want to keep these animals out of your yard, try to remove any food sources. Don't leave dog food out in your yard. Don't leave cat food out. They love those kind of easy snacks. Sometimes they'll eat bird seed if you have bird seed out. I know that's a little bit more difficult to control, but what you don't want to do is leave large amounts of seed out because that's going to attract those animals to your backyard. The good news is they typically only come out at night. They're probably in your yard all the time and you never see them because you're sleeping. It's the odd time that you may run across them. Just let them do their thing and they'll move on.
All right, another common call I've heard is about bats.
Yeah.
So what should people know about bats?
Bats are on everybody's radar screen because everybody knows bats are one of the species in Lincoln and in Nebraska that carries rabies. There's not a high incidence of rabies in bats, but it's still a concern. So people should know that if you see a bat in your house, that's most typically when you're going to see it. Don't touch it. Call us. We'll try to make a determination as to whether or not it's a safety risk to you or your family, and we'll remove the bat.
So if I hear something in my attic or up in the ceiling, what should I do? Should I call you guys right away?
If you hear something in your attic, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that animal control needs to respond to. We really only want you to call us if you can actually see that there's an animal in your attic and you know for sure something's up there. We're kind of a quick fix when it comes to animals in the home. So we have officers who are responding to these types of calls during the day from 7 a.m. to 10 at night. And then after 10 o'clock at night, we have on-call officers who respond to emergencies only. We typically only like to come out if we know for sure that you know definitely that you have something in your house. We don't really have the time to come out and look around the house and do a thorough search. So we really just want you to call us if you know for sure you have something.
So bats, for instance, we have a bat box in our backyard. They're also beneficial, correct?
They are, yeah. Bats are great in the summertime because they eat lots and lots of bugs and mosquitoes, which carry West Nile virus. So if you have bats around, that's a good thing. People have kind of been conditioned over time to see bats as a scary thing, and bats aren't scary. Bats are part of our environment. They're a necessary part of our world, and they do a lot of good for us.
So besides having a bat box, what are some things you can do to sort of keep them from getting into your house?
You want to make sure that any opening in your house, and that can be something as small as a quarter, is sealed up. That's all the edges of your roof. Any space in your house that is the size of a quarter or larger, a bat's going to be able to get through, and they're going to come into your house looking for shelter. So you want to make sure that your house is sealed up and that there's no place for them to enter.
I don't know if you guys have gotten calls about it, but little birds like falling from the trees.
Yeah, from the nest. So in the springtime, we get hundreds and hundreds of calls on baby birds. It's extremely time consuming for us to respond to these calls. We don't have a lot of officers working in a particular shift to give us the ability to respond to all these calls. So what we encourage is in the springtime, if you see a baby bird on the ground, keep in mind that mom may have pushed those birds out of the nest and she's trying to teach them to fly. Don't panic if you see a baby bird on the ground. Let mom come and do her thing before you call animal control. If the bird's injured, by all means call us and we'll come out and we'll try to catch the bird and we'll get it to wildlife rescue. Or in some cases, they have to be humanely euthanized. But we really encourage people to just let nature take its course, let the mother birds do their job of being moms, and don't panic.
All right, the other thing that we have seen in our backyard we have a fox. So I've never seen a fox in my backyard before. Is this something that's becoming more common?
Well, we've noticed within the past year or so that the fox population in Lincoln has really skyrocketed. So we have a lot of foxes. It's a cycle. Some years we see a lot of foxes, some years we don't. So we're getting lots of calls on foxes right now. Springtime is when they're having their pups. Typically, animal control isn't going to get involved when it comes to foxes unless they're injured or sick. If you see them in your backyard, enjoy them. They're really cool. They're not going to hurt you or your pets. And just enjoy the experience of having these beautiful creatures in your neighborhood.
And you're saying, should people not worry if they have small pets, or is there something they should keep an eye on? Should be making sure those pets are inside at night? Is there anything like that they should be aware of?
When it comes to foxes, foxes aren't going to prey on your pets. If you have a smaller dog, maybe the size of a Yorkie, you probably want to just keep an eye on it. That's probably just a good precaution when you have any kind of wildlife around your home. But typically foxes aren't going to mess with your dogs. But in any case, you just want to be careful, be cautious.
What do you do when someone calls you and says they have cats on their property that aren't theirs and they think that they may be wild?
So when someone calls us about cats, we really want to come out and take a look at the situation and see what's going on. Sometimes we have neighborhood cats that are just wandering around, but we do have neighborhoods in Lincoln that have high concentrations of feral cats. These can be a nuisance. They can be a real problem. So we want to come out and assess the situation. If we feel that we have a wild cat colony that's kind of started to grow in an area, we can get in touch with some of our partners who do trap, neuter, release work, have them come in and start to work with those populations, or in extreme situations, we'll come out and we'll trap those cats and remove them ourselves. The big thing is we don't want those colonies growing any bigger, and we don't want them becoming a nuisance for the neighborhood. So it's important that an animal control officer comes out and assesses what exactly is going on. And we'll come out and do that for free.
During this time of year, are there any other words of wisdom that you would give people?
Even though we live in a big city like Lincoln, wildlife do very well living in close proximity to people. So you're going to see wildlife. Just because you live in a city doesn't mean that you're never going to see these things. We have all sorts of different wildlife that come through Lincoln on a daily basis. What I'd encourage people to do is just realize that this wildlife is here, learn to live and coexist with the wildlife. Call us when you absolutely think that we need to respond. Something's sick, something's injured, but otherwise, just learn to coexist with wildlife. They're here and they're going to stay.
I feel like I just want to bring my coffee outside and hope for a few animals to show up.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.